Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. This is the only podcast where I cover every episode of the Sunbow cartoon. We did DIC, even Extreme, and every issue of the Marvel Real American Hero comic book, page by page, panel by panel. And we're back with another edition of You on Joe. That's right. This is the format where you, the listener, you're the guest of the show. We talk about your favorite thing about G.I. Joes. What is it? Is it a line? Is it a sub-team? Is it a character? Is it a movie? Whatever it is that you love about G.I. Joe, it is up for discussion. You drive the conversation. If you want to participate and be a guest, please reach out to me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Joe and Joe Pod, or you can send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what topic you want to cover. The more specific, the better. While you're online, please give a rate and review on your podcast app. Every review you give, it helps grow the show. If you're so inclined, you can also visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/joeandjoepod. You can help keep the show afloat that way. Now, speaking of that, let's give a lot of love to our wonderful sponsors, the Movies and a Meal podcast. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies and a Meal podcast. The Movies and a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews, they do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies and a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies and a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. All right, so when you meet Vera Vanguard, our guest this week, you are instantly put at ease. She is one of the friendliest, most engaging people who, when I just randomly mentioned that I run a G.I. Joe podcast to, her face lit up like the 4th of July, and she spit out the words, you know, Shipwreck was my boyfriend. So I knew she had to be a guest on You on Joe. Vera is a director, writer, producer, filmmaker, and creator of the new playmotion feature film Apocalypse Love. That's right, everyone. She's a puppeteer who, as you will hear on the show, has actually been in front of your toy-loving eyes for quite some time. It was a surprise to me. So make sure you check out her movie. It's at Apocalypse Love Movie on Instagram and apocalypselovemovie.com. It just premiered at the Golden State Film Festival, and it won the Best Animated Feature, so congratulations, Vera Vanguard. Now, I have long said that Shipwreck is easily in my top 5 Joes, most likely top 3 all time. Between his unstoppable animated version to his absolutely perfect toy, he and Polly have long held a huge place in my heart. So to meet someone like Vera, who's held an actual torch for Hector her entire life, it was a joy to talk about our favorite sailor. In fact, I was so inspired, the very next day, I went on to WWE 2K23 and I made a custom Shipwreck wrestler for the PlayStation 5 completely with a Polly entrance cape. So if you're playing that game, search for the hashtag JoeOnJoe or use the G.I. Joe hashtag and you'll find my creations. I hope you enjoy them. I'm planning on making, they give you 80 slots in the game, so I figure I'll make 80 G.I. Joes, and that'll be awesome. Now, I don't have to hope that you're going to love this conversation, because I absolutely know that you will. Vera's excitement shines through, so let's check in with Apocalypse Love filmmaker Vera Vanguard as we discuss Hector X Delgado. So Shipwreck is the name of the game today, Vera Vanguard. Yes. Love Shipwreck.
Yes.
We met.
Everyone does.
Everyone does. I love Hector X Delgado. You and I met at Golden Apple Comics I happened to
Yes.
randomly mention that I had a G.I. Joe podcast. Your face lit up.
It did.
It lit up like no one else I'd ever seen light up. And you looked at me and said, Shipwreck is my boyfriend.
He is. When I was a little kid, Shipwreck was my boyfriend. He was the ladies' man. So I was like, well, he must be my boyfriend then, because I'm like 6 years old watching the old cartoons from the 80s, and that was my boy. Every time he came on the cartoon, I was like, that's my boyfriend.
Were you jealous when he had the Mira episodes?
Or
Mara, rather. I always say Mira. I get my Mara confused.
I think I was too young to understand that. I was like, well, he could have her, but I'm like next in line, right? Like I'm still waiting to grow up. Like I knew that I was gonna have to wait to grow up to be his girlfriend. Like I knew as a little kid, like that was. I had like 3 of them.
He was very much like the Han Solo of the show.
He was.
You know, there were a couple Joes that fit that bill, but he absolutely fits that bill. You know, he's a smuggler. He's not really, you know, he joined the team not as a military guy. He was a merchant marine who just kind of tagged along with Snake Eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Snake Eyes was also a sexy one to me.
Oh well, yeah. That's,
I
that's just that hot leather look.
Yeah. Who doesn't like that? Jeez. I think I had like in my subconscious as a little kid, I was already forming my future. Like,
well, you know, they say listen to children when they say what they're into.
Yeah, because they'll grow up into the freaky adults that they grow into.
Yeah, exactly. And it's best to embrace them at an early age because you want them to grow up healthy and happy, just like yourself.
Well, what do you think about like his relationship with Mara?
Oh, I loved it.
Really?
I thought it was so heartbreaking and tragic, and you know, the woman he couldn't be with, and there was continuity there because, you know, with cartoons it was rare to get cross episode storylines that continued, right? Like you had relationships, Duke and Scarlet, but to actually refer to full episodes and be like, oh yeah, that was the girl I dated, and then she got turned into realized she was a fish girl and I can't be with her. You know, like that's a full-on continuity reference, and that was everything to me. Everything. Yeah.
No, well, G.I. Joe was so ahead of its time because I remember watching it as a little kid, and I'm like, that was like my first cartoon kiss I've ever seen. Destro and Baroness, and he's like, oh, there was something in her eye. I was like you're not. I knew as a little kid, I'm like, you're not supposed to see this in a cartoon. Like Vera, in my mind, I was like, oh, no.
Shameless plug here. Go back a couple episodes on the podcast feed. We talked about the Flint and Lady J romance.
Oh,
with guest Ryan Kulik, and it's all this. It is all this discussion about like teaching you relationships and teaching you different types of relationships and power dynamics within those relationships.
This is what pisses me off about today's youth. Oi, let's talk like we're old. But it's like they think they invented it. Like, no.
Yeah.
This has all been done
hey, kids,
many
you
moons
kids,
ago.
get off of my Quonset hut. Get off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get out of my Kwanzaa hut.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when did you first realize? Well, we should before we go any further. Of course, voiced by the great Neil Ross, like who he's got such a great distinctive voice, but you know, he obviously does different voices, but you can hear his Shipwreck in various cartoons. When have you realized that he was kind of doing a Jack Nicholson? Like, did that, like, at what point did you learn about Jack Nicholson? Because I don't know who Jack Nicholson was. And then I learned who Jack Nicholson was, and I was like, he's doing a Shipwreck.
Well, everyone was doing Jack Nicholson back then. Christian Slater.
Right.
I mean, like he made his career being a young, hotter Jack Nicholson. So I would think Tom Cruise was doing a little Jack Nicholson when in his smile.
Oh, he was.
You know, like that devilish smile that he's got.
Yeah.
So Jack has set the tone for a lot of things. But no, I was too young to like put those two together, and then I wasn't such a film buff growing up until like when I got to Hollywood. I grew up in New York, And when I got to Hollywood and started like getting deep into like learning the craft of filmmaking, I started watching the movies and going, connecting the dots and going, I'm so late to this game. Damn it. I could have gotten this all done in my youth.
Well,
no.
When did you come out to Hollywood? When was that?
I came out to Hollywood in 2004.
Awesome.
This young little whippersnapper, and I said, I'm going to change the world. No.
And you are one puppet at a time, because you are
one puppet at a time.
Yeah, Vera, you're a filmmaker.
I am.
Yeah, you have also worked in makeup artist as well, and you're a puppeteer. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I'm a puppeteer by trade, and over the last 10 years, I've worked in almost like hundreds and hundreds of toy commercials. There's a possibility that like the teenagers that grew up over the last 10 years, like mm-hmm. all the commercials they've seen probably had my hand somewhere in there.
Great. Is there anything you can any toy line that you have members of, or that you can share? I don't know if you can share those.
All of them. Of course. All of them. It would be easier for me to state the things that I haven't worked on, but I was a staple hand puppeteer at Mattel for years and years, like Barbie commercials, Monster High, Bratz, if you want to go that far.
Awesome.
I was the hand for almost most, if not all, Hot Wheels commercials. I was the one, I'm the fist pounding that activator to like send that car down that.
Really?
Down whatever. Yeah, that's me. That every time. And
that's awesome.
WWE toys. They were. I've met a lot of the wrestlers from WWE because they come in to do the commercials. That's just off the top of my head. Like I've done just the hand modeling part. I've done everything from like Liquid Death to like El Pollo logo.
The craziest chicken is the best chicken. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's fabulous. I did not know that at all. That's really great. And
very few people do.
And you've parlayed this talent mm-hmm. into a feature film, which is dropping soonish. This year. So tell us about it. It's called Apocalypse Love. I've seen the trailer. I love it.
Yes. Thank you.
For you Joe listeners out there, it's playmotion. So just like we do with a lot of the G.I. Joe toys, where it's that playmotion style where you can see the hands, but they blend into the background, and then you get the action out of the figure without doing stop motion. It's play motion. So tell us all about that, Vera.
Well, since that's what we did the whole entire time of me working in commercials, and I've actually also done it in other feature films, like I'm the hand writing the name of the dog's name in Hotel for Dogs. Like I've done so many weird things.
You must have the most beautiful hands in Hollywood, then.
I have the smallest and most childlike hands in Hollywood.
Really?
It's such a weird set of skills. Like you think hand modeling is like holding something, and no, I like when you're doing toys, it's a very niche, very weird set of skills where you're like usually underneath the set with your arm over your head watching a monitor below. So people always ask like, well, why can't the kids do it? Because you have to do this weird like you have to know where the camera is and where mm-hmm. the light is, and your body's in contorted positions. Like it's very, very physically demanding to be contorted for hours underneath a set with your arm over your head and like watching a monitor, because like I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm watching a monitor.
So you're working backwards. Yeah,
right? You're working backwards. It's pretty wild, and no one's ever done a feature film with play motion, and it's so funny because everyone who's watched this film, who I've sent a screener to, I think I sent you a screener too.
Oh, did you send? Oh, I just got the. I'll check that. I thought it was just the trailer.
No. I'll send you the screener. It will be out worldwide on VOD in the year, but I'm like, no one's ever done a feature film like this before, and when people watch it, you forget the hands are there. You're just so engrossed in the story and the characters and how they're feeling, and it's a wonderful story. It's a zombie alien puppet movie. I mean, come on, you guys. It's a play motion zombie alien apocalyptic love story, but not between the zombies and the aliens. The story is aliens come down from space and zombify all our dead, so they all crawl out of the. There's more dead people than living people, so they become the ground troops that start murdering us. And And then it's all about this little goth kid running around with his dead girlfriend in a body bag. I will leave it there.
What? That sounds fun. And
It is a very
90-minute, like feature length?
It's 60-minute
60
featurette
minutes?
length.
Wonderful.
So it's considered still, anything over 45 is considered feature. So it's a feature. But trust me, every minute of those 60 minutes, you're going to be like,
glued to your felt seat.
oh yeah, absolutely glued with glue dots.
That's awesome.
That's
really great. And you're the director of it.
Yes, I wrote, direct, and produced it, and I hired on some of the best people that I could find. You know, I called everyone and I said, all my friends, you know, over the years in Hollywood, you meet the best of people.
You do.
And I have an incredible soundtrack. Like, I called up all my rock star friends and I'm like, hey, can I have a song? And they're like, sure. So we have bands like Vampires Everywhere and John Fryer, who produced all of Depeche Mode's stuff back in the day. Like, we have some incredible music on this. Like, it's a rockin' soundtrack of puppets running around. No one said no. I call, pick up the phone and go, hey, do you want to work on a zombie alien puppet movie? Who's going to say no to that?
Only a crazy person would say no to that.
Only a crazy person.
An absolute crazy person would say no to that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see that. So do you have you said an end of the year on VOD?
Yeah.
When people can
we
look
just
for it?
literally just finished it. It's on, I just sent it to my distributor. So like 3 weeks ago, and that takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But all the pertinence will be listed on our website, apocalypselovemovie.com, or follow us on Instagram at apocalypselovemovie.
So smart. Listeners, go check it out. I think you'll enjoy quite a bit, especially those of you who are familiar with the G.I. Joeberg style videos that our friends over at G.I. Joeberg do. Very same, a lot of the same energy, a lot of the same great work, dedication, and fun special effects too.
Oh yeah.
Lots of apocalyptic special effects in that trailer.
Yes. It's all practical, except for the spaceships and like the laser beams. Everything else is practical. Like if the puppet is driving a car, which happened to be a Mini, haha, get it?
I see what you did there.
There's no green screen behind them. Like, we actually put a monitor back there to like have the driving environment, and it's actually playing. So it's nothing was green screened. Everything is practical.
That's great.
Except for the spaceships, which, unless I make friends with some aliens.
Yeah, I was going to say, those are just real. You just pulled those.
Those are just real.
From the recently released federal files.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll save that for your other podcast.
It is so wild. The U.S. government, the world is so crazy now. The government literally said, yeah, there's UFOs. We don't exactly know where they're from. And the world was just like, oh, okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
It is insane that's a thing that's happening.
Does that affect it doesn't affect us. Like, we still have to go to work and pay our taxes. So it's like, this whole time the government's like, we can't let the little person know about all it. And the little people are like, we don't care. We're just trying to survive.
Well, I mean, and that also gives lie to like every Hollywood movie when they're like, we got to keep it secret. And then as soon as the secret gets out, the world panics and,
exactly. I think they underestimate us. Like, they really truly think we're like a bunch of children. We're like, dude, we don't care. Can I just like have relief from the gas prices? Like, that's
true.
all we.
That is true. Now, I will say this though. However, if a UFO actually literally came down and like Keanu Reeves, Klaatu Barada Nikto walked out, that I think would be a different story.
Well, if Keanu Reeves like alien walked out, all the girls would be like, okay, beam me up.
Take me to your leader.
Take me to your alien planet. Like, I mean, how many of us are ready to like go get beamed up? I know like Elon would be like, woohoo!
Oh, listen,
take me to Mars.
Hey, I love my wife Toilet Teal. She's great, but I've said to her, if they offer me a rocket ship to Mars, I'm going.
Yeah,
they never would. I'm too old and fragile, but I would not say no to that question.
But like, what if their technology can restore you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I'm not even saying aliens. I'm saying if like the U.S. government was like, hey, we came up with a one-way trip to Mars and we happen to need, a heavy set 6'3" balding Polish guy. You fit the bill. Can we put you on this rocket ship? You'll never see the world again. I would be like, yeah, you can. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And that's how I would go out.
Well, wouldn't your requisite be like taking your G.I. Joe figures with you?
Yeah, I would just take a few reference books with me.
Okay.
And definitely some video files of both G.I. Joe cartoons and Apocalypse Love the movie for sure.
Well, for sure. Once you see it, you're gonna want to see it every day.
It'll be one of those things we send into space, and then other like space aliens will see it and think that we are human puppets.
Yeah,
and
because we're human meat puppets.
Yeah, and they're like human meat puppets with flesh-like hands that hold them up.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know the evolutionary reason for that, but there must be a reason.
It's literally Inception over and over and over.
Yeah, completely. So, Vera, back to our guy, Shipwreck, who,
yes,
for the record, for me, easily top 5 Joes of all time. Probably top 3 for me. I'm a Snake Eyes front guy for sure. I love Shipwreck
Duke.
So much.
Yeah.
I love Polly. I love his pistol. It was so unique. His flintlock pistol. I loved the fact that he came with those, like, they call them boarding hooks. I never knew what they were called. It was just a rope with some metal on them. Everything about Shipwreck. His hat is great. He had the hook on the side of the belt.
Yes.
Now, you said you had multiple shipwrecks.
I did.
Up.
Okay, so I grew up as a tomboy, but I was a girly tomboy. I just didn't know I was the tomboy that I was because I played with all the toys. And I grew up like super poor. So somebody felt so like sad for me. They gave me a bag, a literal bag, like a grocery shopping bag full of their old G.I. Joes.
Oh, wow.
So I had like 100 G.I. Joes to my name. And one survives till today. The little red ninja girl.
Oh,
I have
Jinx.
her in my kitchen. Yes. I have her in my kitchen as we speak. She's the only one that survived from childhood to today. But I had all those Joes on one end, and I had my Barbie dolls on the other end, and it was like a war of Barbie versus Joe. And that was how I played as a kid. Because I was such a rough little kid playing with all my, doing War of Joe versus Barbie.
Sure.
It was like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Like, I'm sure I'm not the only kid that did this.
Shipwreck was probably like, step on me, Barbie. Just step on me.
Step on me. Step on my face with your high heels. I was too young for that sort of thing.
Sure.
But I knew something weird was happening in my mind. I just knew it. I knew I was not completely right.
And you said your Polly kept breaking.
My Polly kept breaking. Like the little claw that sits on his shoulder, it kept breaking. And I could just not live with a broken Polly. So I would make my mom buy me another one. And then I'd break that Polly. And then I had her buy me another one. And I don't know what happened. I think the last Polly survived, but it didn't survive childhood to adulthood when I wound up losing most of my toys. But I have kept my Voltron. I have kept my very first red Corvette Hot Wheels car.
Awesome.
I have Jinx. And I have a couple of My Little Ponies who the Joes also used to ride into the sunset.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was ride or die. That was the right size. They could literally ride My Little Pony.
That was the right size. Yeah. Even though those My Little Ponies, those OG ones, are like kind of thick and like they're thick little horse action figures.
They're thick with 2 C's.
They're super thick. But Joe's legs could open really wide. Those figurines are so well articulated. Like,
well, it's like, as soon as they came up with the swivel arm,
yes,
it changed the game.
It was the end of the end. It was it. We could all play, like, do all the weird things with them.
Yeah, it absolutely changed the game. That swivel arm, so good.
Yeah,
so absolutely great.
Yeah, and they were all like, I don't know, like, if it was probably they were priced just right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could just collect them all
Yeah,
if
they
you
were right
really
around
were
they were
into
right
it.
around $3, sometimes 250,
Yeah,
299. You know.
yeah,
Yeah,
and if you get them on sale, I guess that's how the people that gave me the bag of joes got them. They just, you know, grabbed it all.
that's
Uh,
awesome. Now
yeah.
on the show, a little. It's not super controversial, but I love that Polly is pretty sentient and can have conversations.
Yeah,
I love that. I've always
yeah.
said my favorite version of G.I. Joe is the talking animal version of G.I. Joe. I
Mhm,
think it adds a silly charm to it that when they don't use that, like they don't live in that world, it's a little too
mhm.
serious for me.
They
What are your thoughts on the talking Polly debate?
I I love it because there are things you can do in animation that you can't in real life, and I think Disney's finding that out quite a bit. When you draw a cartoon, like in actual art, you can make the world anything you want. And we, as the viewer, are willing to accept it because we know it's animation, it's imagination, it's whatever they want to show us is one thing. But when you go into a CGI version of it, it doesn't work as well. Like,
Yeah.
like look how
Well, there's a bounce.
articulated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I always think of like old school cartoons as having like a lively bounce to them.
they did.
That
They
gets lost
absolutely did.
in a lot of the CGI, and that's, it's starting to come back a little bit as I think as animators are starting to learn it, but there's a
Yeah,
lively bounce to old school animation that gives it life.
absolutely.
um it's it's kind of like when you look at a piece of art, if you look at like a comic book art page, just like the page the artist drew on
Yeah.
that then got inked. You see the inks and the inks first pop out, but right underneath it, there's always this soft line of pencil that
Hmm.
gives everything underneath it a little bit more energy to it. And
Yeah, it's organic.
if you do a hard Xerox of it, so you're just picking out the blacks and you put the two together, there's always a deadness
Hmm.
to just the inked ones, versus the one that has a little bit of that pencil life to it. Now,
Yeah,
obviously, some of the better artists know how to, fix that. But I'm talking like just in general when you're comparing the two, and that's kind of what happens, I think, in old school
yeah,
animation.
yeah, absolutely. And the art form, I don't know how much of that old school art form is lost at this point because everyone just wants to learn the CGI version, and it's
Right.
like how many more Pixar movies can we live through with that bubbly, weird, distorted animation type? Where like they could have gone like like the metaverse, like
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
like what is this? What is this
Well,
garbage?
yeah.
We have
it's
like
it's tough, and I think and you being a puppeteer, I think you're plugged into this
yeah,
from like an old school. You're on the front lines of this conversation.
yeah,
So just because it may make it cheaper and quicker to do doesn't mean as an art form we should abandon it. That's my take on it.
yeah,
Like,
because you lose it. And
yeah.
and play motion animation is literally the cheapest on the fly. Like the performance, like you don't have to worry about the mouth moving, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to worry about anything, and yet you could make it so expressive. Like when you see Apocalypse, you'll see that you'll get immersed in it. I promise you. Like the way the characters are moved and puppeteered, you're gonna be right there with them.
Well, it
And
reminds me. It reminds me. We actually recently saw. I've seen it before years and years ago, but my wife had never seen the Lion King Broadway
mhm.
production, and so we recently went to see it again. And I think it'd been 15 years since I'd seen it. You so quickly get immersed in the performance and in the action that you
Yes.
quickly start looking at the puppets on their heads or on their
Hmm.
arms instead of the actual person behind them. And that's the same vibe with play motion stuff too. After you
Yes.
watch it, your eyes just glaze over the hands or the whatevers, and you really get engrossed in the characters.
Exactly. And to bring it back to like the old school animation style where they have bounce
Mm-hmm.
and you're willing to accept that there's a talking animal. I mean,
Yep.
it's natural.
Um,
It just seems natural.
Probably the most high profile version of that bounce conversation is Yoda. in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
They did them CGI, and I've seen the interviews where the creators said they went back to a puppet because there was no bounce in Yoda's ears.
Yeah.
And they realized that after watching episode 1, they were like, there's just an organic bounce to having a live thing there that at the time even they weren't able to replicate. And even now you can, I know you can replicate it digitally, but that's still never going to have the randomness of a live performance. Wind in the studio at the time of shooting it might move his hair one way, or the puppeteer's hand shakes in a certain way, and it gives you a performance that if you had designed it, you never would have thought that would have worked. Things
that
like
actually brings me to 2 points.
Yeah.
One, I think that we are so saturated with CGI stuff, like oversaturated. Like how much more CGI can we take? So when I think the pendulum's going to swing a little bit back to practical effects. Like people want to see puppetry again. They want to see practical monsters again. They want to see the makeup. Like all that will make a comeback. I think it's just that now we have better technology on makeup and effects and puppeteering and the electronics to like animate like the puppets and the faces. Like I think that's going to make a comeback because people really appreciate like the art form of a practical effect.
I agree 100%.
And
I think I think a lot of this stuff is often driven by some of the niche genres, right? They always say VHS and Betamax was won by the adult industry. I think horror is going to be to purposely use this word, vanguard of that return to practical. Of bringing that back because you're getting more and more horror films that are now priding themselves on doing real applications and real blood and real, whatever the special effect is versus relying on CGI.
I think so.
Yeah, I really do. Like, because those are like the groundswell genres, right? The ones where it's really, they're not super expensive films. They're lower bar to get into. To do them, you really have to have a lot of passion for that. And so I think those are the kind of things that are going to drive.
Mm-hmm. Well, look how well Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey is doing.
Have you seen that yet? Have you seen it yet?
I have. What's funny? Their cinematographer actually is supposed to be the cinematographer on Apocalypse Love because this was conceived during quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
And he was stuck in England because it's a British company and we were stuck out here. So we never were able to make that happen. And I was able to pick up my cinematographer, Scotty Baker, which I'm very grateful for. But I went to go see a screening when they were in town and it's all practical.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
that's high on my list. I need to see that. It's one of those, I think you're either going to love it or you're going to be, you're not going to be into it, but why not be into it?
If you love that genre, you'll be great.
Yeah,
it's just right up that genre's alley.
Exactly. Why not be into it? Now, did you follow any of the evolution of Shipwreck, or were you just a V1 Shipwreck 1985 guy?
I'm a V1 1985 kind of gal.
Okay, so they updated him in the toy. His next version. I'll tell you this. To be fair, it speaks to the strength of that design, that original Shipwreck design. They didn't do another version of him until 1994.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what was the new version like?
Like a wetsuit, kind of like a scuba guy.
Oh.
Yeah. And then they re-released a version of that in 96. And then you're not until 2002 do they really give him an update that was actually driven from the comics. In the comics, and I do like this update they gave him. I can do without the wetsuit stuff, although it makes sense for like special missions. In the comics, when Devil's Due took it over, which was like 98, 99, 2000-ish, they updated his look, which I think totally worked because it did give him a more real edge. But instead of like that old school pirate or sailor look, they gave him a skull cap, like a wool skull cap. He looked a lot like Quint from Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. In that, like you'd wear the cap and Hooper wore the cap. Yeah, so it was like Hooper's cap with Quint's clothes. Mm-hmm. And he just looked more like a modern sailor would look, and he was kind of bad, like a little more rough and tumble. They finally gave him in the comics. They finally gave him a girlfriend. He dated CoverGirl.
Oh,
Yeah, which was really nice because she was the former model, right? Supermodel turned GI Joe, and so she was always the considered the most she was the one. She was the look out, everybody. That's CoverGirl. You're never going to have a chance with her because she's a supermodel. And then the most scoundrelly of scoundrel Joes ended up with her. And it was
okay. That makes sense in the modern dating climate, doesn't it?
Really does, doesn't it? Yeah, it was
the
so
girl
smart.
The girl always goes for the bad boy. Come on now.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense. It was so great. It was such a great update. I really, really loved it. And then he's pretty much kept that kind of look in the comics for the most part over the years.
That stays once again in the theme of they were teaching like modern like adult relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like cutesy wootsy. It was like it was well written. If there's anything I love, it's good writing. Like bad writing can destroy things for me so quick. Mm-hmm. I can actually, if we could circle back to CGI going practical.
Sure.
The thing that got me into this business and like the love of my life is Dark Crystal, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the updated Dark Crystal on Netflix.
Bits of it.
Where they did the series.
Mm-hmm.
And it pissed me off so much. Like, first of all, how dare they not hire me to puppeteer? How dare they? I didn't even know it was happening. I was like, how dare you people? But that the puppeteering was excellent. The look was excellent. But they CGI'd those puppet faces. Like they didn't need to.
Yeah.
And it was a little creepy. But that's not my big my big gripe with that show wasn't the CGIing on top of the puppet faces, which didn't need it. It was the story writing. Like, you guys nailed everything except the story part. Like, what is this garbage? What is this absolute trash of a story? If I was to write it, Miss Vanguard would have written the original story, which they like glossed over in the beginning. Like, you want to see the Skeksis and the how did that origin story start? Like, their ship came down, it became a castle, they split into like the Mystics and the Skeksis. That's the story I want to see. That would have been the prequel, not this whatever the hell. Ugh.
Well, that's that's what's you're touching on one of the hardest things that I think any creative endeavor has. When you strike gold, with someone like a Shipwreck or someone or Dark Crystal, something that has a very unique, specific look, specific story, etc. And then if you want to continue it, you're running the risk of making a wrong move. And it's so hard to strike gold in the first place.
Oh yeah.
And
Dark Crystal wasn't even a hit when it came out.
No, but it was always a cult. Like people who love, even I remember this as a kid, you either loved it or you just didn't care for it. But if you loved
Honestly, I think it's so scary. Like, I don't think kids today would be into it. They would. It's not for children.
You know what's funny?
Like a Skeksis is the scariest puppet ever made.
Years and years ago,
I would argue.
My niece is now in college, so this is how old I am. But when she was younger, I just remembered. Oh, we used to watch this movie a lot when we were a kid, and I got her a copy of The Last Unicorn. She was in tears.
I will cry to this day.
So traumatic, and I forgot how traumatic that movie was. Yet we watched it all the time.
Yeah, and we were fine.
Yeah,
I don't know. Something's happened in the last however long. I won't.
But that's the risk you run when you strike gold, kind of on the first. The first hit. And you see this in comic books. You see this in almost any kind of like serialized thing.
Yeah.
If a character starts out okay and then they kind of find their footing, then they tend to have the kind of resilience that you can tell almost any story with. For example, like Batman, Spider-Man, right? They were obviously they were huge hits at first, but all the things that today we associate with them, those things weren't, a lot of them weren't there right away. Right. With Batman, they, eventually gave him, his, eventually Robin comes along and then he stops killing people and, his costume gets tweaked so that it's a better looking costume, with all the variations. Same thing with Superman, right? He originally, Kryptonite didn't exist. Jimmy Olsen, like all the add-ons and stuff, they just get built organically over the years. And what we remember is the successes. What we don't remember are the failures, because the issue before they introduced Lex Luthor, they introduced Tony Luthor, and Tony Luthor sucked, So we don't remember that Tony Luthor existed, right? So when you get a character like Shipwreck, who's pretty great out of the gate.
Out the gate. I think the first time I saw him, I was like, instant love.
Yeah.
It was just, that's it. That's my boy. That's my 6-year-old boyfriend.
Yep. And then they slowly add stuff to him, but he still remains Shipwreck, right? They give him the Mira stuff. They give him the Mara stuff rather. They fill in his background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then if you go forward and you're like, okay, here's the Shipwreck story. Now you're dealing with people who fell in love with a specific version, the Shipwreck, the solo series, right? So now you're dealing with people who are, well, that's not how my Shipwreck would go,
Yeah.
So it's a risk. It's a real risk. It's kind of like when they did the Snake Eyes movie, and I'm not I'm not defending the quality of the movie. We've talked about that a lot on the show, but in general, just there was so much outcry of, let's take away the actual quality, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, but there was so much outcry of that's not the Snake Eyes story that I know. That's not the this that I know. That's not the that I know. That you run a real risk of you just run a risk. Like it's hard to do and to move those characters forward, touching on the Dark Crystal thing. Had they mined the old story, you would have been more comfortable with it because that's a story you wanted to see fleshed out. But then going forward, Star Wars is a great example. They did the prequels, which fleshed out stuff we were curious about. And then I know there's a lot more reasons for it, but when they do the new trilogy, it's garbage. It's all over the place, and it pleases no one because it's not telling. The Star Wars got so frozen in our head for so long that anything variation of that it's going to be hard to get over.
Say Hollywood waved a magic wand and I became the leader.
I can work on
the
that.
supreme leader of Hollywood.
I'll talk to some people.
Yeah,
Vera.
please talk.
Yeah.
If I was
think you're capable.
magically to become Hollywood's supreme leader, I, as a filmmaker, would absolutely pander to the original material. It would have to literally, same thing with Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's garbage. It's just poorly written. There are way better writers. Why aren't you hiring them?
Well, you're nailing. You're hitting the nail on the head. I've said this too many times on the show. So many people have come in over the years to Golden Apple. They're doing research for whatever comic book property. And we've absolutely heard people say, we've had to keep our face stone because we don't want to be complete jerks, but they've said, oh, I've been hired in the writer's room for this comic book property. Oh yeah? And they go, I don't know anything about him. How can I learn about him? And I just go, why have you been hired?
Exactly.
I don't care how good of a writer you are. You should have known all this before you ever walked into any interview, and you should, it doesn't mean you have to naturally be an expert. But you should have had to do a little bit of research before you got the job. The fact that they gave you the job without knowing anything about that character is a huge indictment of whoever's making that stuff.
Yeah, and now we see all of this, as they call it, new Marvel product. I love that term. It's new whatever product. Enjoy, simpleton peasants out there. We have made this. You must love it. And then they're surprised when we're like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no.
Well, it's all the rough edges. If you do your, let's say you take a property, whatever the property is, and you do quote your own vision of it, you're ignoring all the rough edges that were sanded away by all the creators over the years.
Yeah, it's a spit on their face. Really,
because every character has their Tony Luthors. Every character does. They have their adventures that sucked. That was why would you make the Punisher a devil, like a zombie guardian of killer of demons? Why would you even do that, Joe Quesada? And that was a huge profile story. That was Marvel Knights when they redid. Punisher came back from the dead, and he shot demons with a demon gun. It's terrible. It's terrible, done by really, really brilliant creators, but they were trying something new. It didn't work. So they changed course and they brought in Garth Ennis and he did the Punisher right. But those exist.
They do.
The problem is
Where are they?
Yeah, the problem is when they do the adaptations and they want to put their spin on it, is they'll come in and go, let's do the demon version. It's like, no. no, that's not the version that people want, using those
They're,
examples.
I think they're just, a lot of executives are not creatives and they're tone deaf to what the fans actually want.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
like once again, wave of the wand, and I am the princess of Hollywood. I would, what property I would like to do and redo and do it correctly? Tomb Raider.
Oh, I enjoyed those last couple ones. I thought they were pretty well done. The Alicia Vikander one?
I would go back to the OG and have the whole movie just Lara running through amazing environments and solving puzzles, and the whole thing would just be like her internal dialogue.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And it would be funny.
Yeah, I think there does need to be more internal dialogue, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed her. There was a lot of, if I recall, there was a lot of Hollywood ham-fistery with that, of like shoehorning in things that you're like, you don't need it in there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't think those movies are bad, but I don't see them as Tomb Raider. It's like, holy cow, cool action girl.
Yeah, true.
But it's not Lara Croft.
Right. Right.
Now, Lara Croft is like, she's not a bike messenger, Lara Croft is a sophisticated, rich lady who has all the money in the world to go to any country in the world.
You're totally
learn any skill she wants. Like, she is James Bond, but just...
It's been a long time since I saw that, and you're absolutely right. She was like the man on the street bike messenger role.
Give me a fucking...
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. This is great.
We would bring back the sophistication.
This is great, Vera. I have to ask, now they've been coming out with new toys. They announced and just made available for purchase recently the new classified version of Shipwreck. He certainly comes with Polly. They've done a Super 7 version, which is, I don't know if you know the Super 7 line of toys, but they're more like, picture the articulation of the OG Star Wars figures, like pretty stiff-armed, straight up and down, but they're modeled after the Sunbow cartoon. So that is literally your design of your boyfriend. So check those out. I think you might, they're Super 7 Shipwreck. I think you'd be really in love with it.
How big are they? What?
Oh, you remember?
I'm a size queen. Let me know.
They're, they're on like the size of like an action figure blister card. So like they're like 3 3/4 inches.
So it's OG size.
Yeah, the OG size. But
but
done in the Sunbow style, and he looks just like Sunbow. He looks so good. And then the classified is 6-inch, and he looks more. He's classic, but he looks more modern and up to date. Like a modernized action figure. $25 versus the $18 Super 7 one. But check out Super 7 Shipwreck. I think you'll pick it up. I think it's pretty good.
I am going to check that Super 7. I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
Things you learn on the G.I. Joe podcast.
Exactly. I get no commission. On this. To be fair, I just want my friends. Yeah. I just want my friends to have cool stuff. That's all. I really do. It's a simple heart to heart. Yeah. And Vera, it's been so great to reconnect with you. We met right before COVID, and then the lockdown happened. We really did. So this has been great. Everyone, please check out Apocalypse Love as apocalypselovemovie.com, at Apocalypse Love on Instagram. Vera Vanguard.
Apocalypse Love Movie.
Yeah. Yeah. On Instagram, right?
Yeah. Yes. At Apocalypse Love Movie.
Awesome. Thank you. Vera Vanguard is the filmmaker. Vera Vanguard is the shipwreck lover.
I am.
Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
I had a lot of fun. And now we all know a whole lot more about Shipwreck, and Joeing is half the battle.